This video was brought to you by Skillshare.
Hey, Noah the vaguely hipstery artist guy here. You know me, I've always got 1,000 projects going at once. I'm painting, I'm writing, I'm doing photography. And that's exactly why I joined Skillshare.
Skillshare is more than just a place to take classes. It's an online learning community where creatives of all types can learn and improve their craft. There are literally thousands of classes to choose from, with more being added all the time, covering illustration, filmmaking, web development, graphic design, more than I've got time to list. And when you join, you get unlimited access to every class. Classes usually take about an hour between a video lesson and a hands-on assignment, so you can tailor the experience to fit your exact needs and schedule.
Oh, and it gets better. In addition to classes covering creative mediums, Skillshare offers tons of practical classes as well.
To help me keep all my different projects in order, I'm taking Productivity for Creatives. Build a system that brings out your creative best with Thomas Frank. All my bases are covered.
The first 1,000 people to click the link down in the description will get a free 1-month trial of Skillshare Premium. Do yourself a favor and check it out. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go write a poem about how I recorded myself illustrating a story about a website and sampled it in a song.
Ow! I really hit my foot. Ow!
16 pickles. Can you believe that Nintendo Directs have been a thing for 10 years? 10 years!
For a decade now, Nintendo has been delivering news directly to us in the form of streamed digital presentations. It's such a perfect, straightforward format that sometimes it's hard to imagine it hasn't been around forever. Before Directs, we got the vast majority of our gaming announcements exactly one time a year at E3. And even then, the concept of watching presentations live instead of just reading the news and watching the trailers later was a fairly new thing in the late 2000s. Things were changing quickly back then. The age of the internet was in full swing, and Nintendo recognized that. So when they announced that they would regularly be sharing news in these update videos, it instantly made all the sense in the world. The thing about Directs, though, is that they've changed a lot over the years. Nintendo has been constantly tinkering on various aspects: length, how they're presented, how surprise reveals are handled, how they're edited, how much cringe to include.
And for that reason, I'd like to take a little break from the preposterous hype of modern era Directs and look back to the very beginning. Today, we're talking about the first Nintendo Directs ever. Please look at them with me in all of their awkward glory. Whoa. Sorry, I'm in a weird mood today.
The first thing I want to mention is that streaming tech was awful back in 2011. YouTube streaming was limited to so few channels that it was practically non-existent. And similarly, Twitch was in its infancy and almost entirely unknown by the masses. Nintendo did upload directs to their YouTube channel, but if you wanted to see them live, you were in for a bad time. Maybe there was some other method I didn't know about, but as far as I know, the only place to watch was on Ustream, the now defunct streaming service that would later be bought by IBM and shuttered. And Ustream was awful. The audio would be delayed, it would constantly freeze, and all too often it'd just fail entirely. It'd just not work. As an aside, that happened to me during the E3 2013 conference, so I had to wait until it was over to go watch it, and when I tried to watch it on the eShop, there was a big picture spoiling Mega Man and Smash, and I was furious! Anyway, on to the first Direct, which hit us in October of 2011. Compared to today's Directs, it is shockingly simple. It's only 7 minutes long, and the whole thing is just Reggie talking to the camera. No animated intro, no fancy transitions, there isn't even any music. No music! It's so straightforward. I mean, it does make sense. You gotta start somewhere, right? Even YouTube megastars with million-dollar budgets like me start out just kinda turning the camera on and doing stuff. You've got to learn what you want to do and how best to do it as you go. I do have to say, though, Reggie dropping a line that would go on to become a meme within the first few moments is very fitting.
We've got some important news if you're an owner of Nintendo 3DS or just thinking of becoming one. And really, if you're neither one yet, what's wrong with you?
It's especially funny that he was getting on everyone's case about owning a 3DS because it had recently had a very rocky launch and only a few months previous had its price slashed dramatically in response. Its flagship game, Super Mario 3D Land, hadn't even released yet. It's also funny how he kicks things off by talking about watching video content on 3DS. Smartphones were rapidly becoming the standard in 2011, but despite that, or perhaps because of it, Nintendo was pushing Hulu and 3D Shrek music videos on us. Reggie calls Shrek's Thriller video a landmark production. They really wanted people to watch stuff on that awful little screen. And it's Nintendo, so of course they thought glasses-free 3D was going to revolutionize the industry, and you can really feel that here.
It's a one-of-a-kind 3D experience you can't buy anywhere else.
Finally, he gets to the games and reveals a few eShop titles, which is pretty cool. Over the years, I've often felt Nintendo's output of smaller download titles was lacking, so it was cool for them to drop a handful on us all at once. Freaky Forms didn't end up wowing everyone, but Pushmo is a fantastic little game that spawned multiple sequels. Where the heck is Pushmo on Switch, by the way? Then he gives more info on Dylan's Rolling Western, which also went on to become a series. And finally, Swap Note, which I had a ton of fun with until Nintendo took it down for very predictable reasons. Then little blurbs on upcoming games, some of which would end up turning the 3DS's fortune around, like 3D Land and Mario Kart 7. He mentioned Skyward Sword, and I don't know about you, but this is the part of the Direct that makes me go, whoa, wait, what? The Wii? The Wii was fizzling out when the 3DS launched, and I played new games on my 3DS only a few years ago, and I so often associate DS with Wii and 3DS with Wii U, so it's funny to be reminded how an old-school retro console like the Wii was still around when they started doing Directs. Reggie closes the first Direct ever with a very big claim.
Nintendo's delivered holiday fun for over 25 years in America. But no previous year has ever matched this one for the breadth and depth of the entertainment that awaits you.
Them's some big words. I mean, I haven't checked the lineup from every year, but hey, I guess new Zelda, 3D Mario, and Mario Kart in one holiday is pretty darn good. And as for the Direct, that's it. Fade to black. No one more thing or anything like that. Just kinda done. I originally planned on making this video about just that one Direct, but obviously there isn't really that much to talk about beyond how hilariously plain it is. I even thought about reacting to it, but that also ended up not sounding like a very good idea. More importantly though, as I dug into the early days of Directs, it was fascinating to see how they developed. Watching the format grow deepened my interest in this topic, and thus expanded the scope of this video. So let's take a look at some of the Directs that came later. At this time, Nintendo was holding presentations for different regions on different dates, so I'm only looking at the English language ones. The second Direct was a few months after the first, the following February, and it's immediately obvious that they put a little more work into this one. We've got multiple people presenting around the Redmond office, nice little animations, and holy cow, nearly 12 minutes of Nintendo news? Am I dreaming? Here we get a little developer interview about Kid Icarus Uprising, featuring an appearance by the ridiculous stand that came with the game. Beautiful. Then an interview about Mario Tennis Open. These interviews take up a substantial amount of the Direct, which is interesting because over the years, they've really moved away from these kinds of one-on-one talks and instead now have developers speaking off scripts, saving the interviews for E3 Treehouse streams. I wonder if they imagined that this would end up being a more common thing, or if it was just kinda the idea they had at the time. Unlike the first Direct, this one's got something a little more juicy for the end. They held a poll to determine the North American box art that would end up on Xenoblade Chronicles, and here Reggie announces the winner. Then he hits us with it, the localization of The Last Story. A great day for Operation Rainfall, which I'm just now realizing might not be as much of a well-known thing anymore, seeing as it happened over a decade ago. I don't know. Basically, it was a big campaign to get Nintendo to localize 3 games, 2 of which were Xenoblade Chronicles and The Last Story. It was a whole thing. Next, Satoru Iwata made his English-language direct debut during a European presentation, introducing the similarly named Nintendo of Europe president Satoru Shibata, which I always thought was funny. But his real time to shine was the pre-E3 Direct they did in early June. It was our first chance to really get to know Iwata. This one really just talks about the Wii U for a half hour to prep people for the game reveals that would occur during E3 itself. Though hey, this one has even more historical significance because it features some primo cringe. Finally! There's this really uncomfortable sketch with a guy playing Zombie U, and it really set the stage for what would come later. Then there was a post-E3 Direct, but it only offered more info on the stuff that was revealed during the live show. And this is a really interesting point in Nintendo's history. This was during the very small window of overlap when E3 was still a live stage event, but Nintendo Directs also existed. During this time, Nintendo clearly still saw Directs as supplemental. Less of a place for reveals, more of a place for updates and info. In fact, the next several Directs and Direct Minis were this way. By this time, the format itself was pretty well developed. They had a really nice, consistent style in terms of how everything was presented. The presenters, the transitions, the music, all that stuff. Directs had come a long way since that first one with Reggie, but they still weren't quite the Directs we all know and love today without one very important thing. Them juicy reveals. Well, all of that changed in 2013. It's funny because I don't really remember noticing the change. I actually thought that the big change came during E3 that year, when they announced that they would be doing a Direct instead of a live show. But looking back, I've found that the change happened right at the start of the new year. I think at that time, Nintendo already knew that they were going to stop doing traditional E3 shows and use their new all-digital format to start revealing new titles. And holy cow, I don't know if they were just that excited about the new format or if they just happened to have that many games to reveal, but wowie kapowie! Take a look at what Nintendo did with Directs once they flipped that switch. It all started in January with the very first series-specific Direct ever. Iwata himself hosted a Pokemon Direct, and he even did the thing. I miss him so much. Anyway, this was when they revealed Pokemon X and Y. And I could be wrong, but I've been hunting through all these early Directs, and I think this was the first time a Direct gave us a big reveal like this. I even remember being really surprised. I didn't think we would get such a thing in a short little presentation. And that was only the beginning. So you know how we get like 3 major Directs a year, tops? Some years have maybe had 4. Yeah, the first half of 2013 had Directs in January, February, April, May, and June. Every single month except March. And every single one featured game reveals. In the January Direct, Iwata specifically mentions wanting to talk about games releasing in the future, and he delivers. Announcements and reveals for Xenoblade Chronicles X, Yoshi's Woolly World, Wind Waker HD, Tokyo Mirage Sessions, and Wii Party U. The February Direct introduced the Year of Luigi, which ushered in the awkwardly fun Direct shenanigans that I never dreamed I would end up missing so much once they were phased out. It also gave us Mario and Luigi Dream Team, Mario Golf World Tour, New Super Luigi U, Mario vs. Donkey Kong Minis on the Move, Dylan's Rolling Western 2, and Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D. Then April, Mario Party Island Tour, Yoshi's New Island, Link Between Worlds. May, Mario and Sonic at the Sochi Olympic Games and Sonic Lost World. Then finally, the first ever all-digital E3 presentation, which, despite all those earlier reveals, gave us Super Mario 3D World, Mario Kart 8, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, and the big reveal of Smash for Wii U and 3DS, with Villager and Mega Man leading the charge. What the heck? Gosh, that's a heck of a half a year. As an aside, remember how I said I was really mad because the stream messed up and Mega Man was spoiled for me? Well, I was also mad because 3D World looked awful and Retro Studios' new project was just another Donkey Kong game. I mean, I've never walked away from a Nintendo presentation more upset. Pretty funny, looking back now. Anyway, at this point, Directs still had quite a ways to go before becoming what they are now. They were still poorly paced, quite boring at times, not the best at knowing what games to prioritize, and Nintendo hadn't quite figured out that a fun, surprising trailer is a much better way to reveal a game than awkwardly saying that the game exists and sharing a few screenshots. But in my eyes, this was where Directs truly began. They had grown from infancy to awkward adolescence, and this was the transition into young adulthood.
And thus the end of our retrospective on the early days of Directs. What do you think? Do you like where Directs have gone since then? Or do you miss the good old days when they were really simple and kinda boring and didn't really have any big reveals at all? I don't know, everyone likes different stuff, I wouldn't judge. Now, if you'll excuse me, it's time to go back to my full-time job, spamming Where Direct in the replies of every single one of Nintendo's tweets.
Whoa.
Sorry, have a banana.